Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, we've got some pretty interesting news out of the state of Minnesota for you this evening. You'll remember that Congressman Keith Ellison has been accused of physical abuse by his former girlfriend, a woman called Karen Monahan. Monahan says that in the middle of a domestic argument, Congressman Ellison grabbed her by the legs and dragged her off the bed while screaming obscenities at her. She said this happened just 2 years ago in 2016. We can't say whether Karen Monahan's story is correct. Of course, we weren't there. We do know, though, that these are serious allegations and they're specific and recent, and they're made against a powerful man. Ellison is, of course, a sitting member of Congress. He's also the deputy head of the DNC. He's a candidate for Attorney General in Minnesota. Under pressure from critics, the state Democratic Party pledged to investigate Monahan's story. Tonight, we have their conclusions. Quote, "An allegation standing alone is not necessarily sufficient to conclude that conduct occurred." That's the finding of the top lawyer for the Minnesota Democratic Party. In other words, Karen Monahan's words don't mean anything. Unless she provides tangible proof, we don't believe her. Let that sink in for a minute in light of all you've seen over the past 2 weeks. This is the standard Democratic Party politicians use to judge their own when they're accused of abuse, at least when political power is at stake. Prove it, honey. Otherwise, shut up and go away. Meanwhile, in Washington tonight, Brett Kavanaugh faces a very different standard. A little more than a week ago, a woman named Julie Swetnick told a remarkable story. Swetnick claimed that as a college student during the early 1980s, she attended at least 10 parties outside Washington where high school boys took turns raping underage girls who had been rendered semi-conscious with drugged punch. The gang rapes, she says, took place in the open. Swetnick says she saw them, but she never told friends, and she never filed a police report. She kept attending these rape parties until she herself was gang raped. According to Julie Swetnick, Brett Kavanaugh attended these parties. She saw him standing in line, she says, waiting his turn for rape. Here's how Swetnick described the scene in an interview with NBC News just tonight.
My body was violated. My soul was broken. I was at a party, and I remember that I started not to feel very well. And next thing I know, I was shoved into a room, and I'm having my clothes torn in different directions. I was physically assaulted in every way you could possibly physically assault a woman.
Everyone is wondering if one of those people was Brett Kavanaugh.
I cannot specifically say that he was one of the ones who assaulted me, but before this happened to me at that party, I saw Brett Kavanaugh there, I saw Mark Judge there, and they were hanging about the area where I started to feel disoriented and laughing. I could hear them laughing and laughing. If Brett Kavanaugh was one of those people that did this to me, there is no way in the world that he should go scot-free on this and that he should be on the Supreme Court.
If he was one of those people, a claim she's not actually making. Judged on its own terms, on the things that she is saying, Swetnick's story raises more questions than it answered. For example, why did she keep going to rape parties 10 in a row? Who are the witnesses to all of this? Dozens of people must have seen these atrocities, and they are atrocities. And yet not a single person has admitted even hearing about any of this. That's hard to understand given the close-knit community of Catholic schools that produced Brett Kavanaugh. Swetnick has provided no evidence of any kind to show this happened. Reporters have interviewed many of her classmates and nobody recalls it. The whole thing is hard to believe, and many questions need to be answered before it can be taken seriously. And yet Chuck Schumer hasn't asked those questions. He heard Swetnick's claims and immediately called for Brett Kavanaugh to drop out of the running. Professional Charlotte and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut agreed with that. He called Swetnick's allegations, quote, a gut punch. Quote, if my Republican colleagues have any sense of morality, they will refuse to move forward with Judge Kavanaugh's nomination. Now, Democrats are demanding that the FBI investigate Swetnick's story. So far, that is not happening. Why is it not happening? Maybe here's part of the answer. This is NBC's Megyn Kelly. Watch her explain.
She faced allegations of her own misconduct during a stint at a Portland company 18 years ago. That company claims she told them she graduated from Johns Hopkins, but they learned the school had no record of her. She also falsely described her work experience at a prior employer. They said that she engaged in unwelcome sexually offensive conduct herself. They said she made false and retaliatory allegations against her coworkers, that they had been inappropriate with her. They said she took medical leave and simultaneously claimed unemployment benefits. At the same time in DC, there was a restraining order filed against her by an ex-boyfriend. So the people who are very upset that the FBI is not looking into Julie Swetnick's allegations, there are reasons for that.
Avenatti's been begging for the FBI.
What a shock.
So I don't.
He's been begging for TV cameras.
He has been begging for TV.
I don't think that.
Takes a lot of guts to say that on NBC.